Hi all, welcome to the channel, welcome to the workshop. It's Monday, we've got Mallard again on the workbench. As you can see, we've got the chassis today. Now, I'm going to attempt, not one, but two issues of the Mallard. Now, I've had a quick look at these. It looks like we're only doing little bits to the chassis, so theoretically, it should be straightforward. It should be absolutely fine, but we know how this build goes. So let's get into it. Let's get building. Right, so this build got off to a really good start. I'm having to do this on voiceover because it recorded no audio whatsoever. I'm not quite sure why or how, but that's what happened. But I'm going to try my best to just voice it over with all the parts we've got. So we've got issue 46 and 47 here. We have got two frets, as you can see, and we are just going to be concentrating on the chassis itself. Now, I'm just about to flick through the magazines and show you what we have, as we usually do. So hopefully you can see that we do just have the single fret, and it's all part of the assembly for underneath the footplate. And you can see what we've got. We've just got a couple of brackets that we need to place in place, and then we do need a little piece set on the side, and then that just goes onto the side of the engine. And you can see we've only got the four little bits there, so very nice and simple. We do have a spare part as well, that's highlighted there, and that will get used later on down the line. Britain's Railways and Great Railway Journeys going across Canada this time. And to show you issue 47 as well. And these are just the steps for the boiler or for the footplate. So we've got a couple of extra steps to go in place. And by the end of it, that's all we've done. And then we've got Mallard Story, and we've got classic locomotives. So this is the fret for issue 46. And as you can see, we've just got the parts to support the footplate. We've only got details on one side. But those two square pieces will actually stick to the back of these pieces here. So I'm going to get these cleaned up, and then we'll get on with building. Right, so I've got all the parts out, and as you can see, I've laid them out in the style of the fret. Now, this is really useful if you have, like me, taken them all out. It's really useful to have a reference point to find out if you've got a part that's correct or not, especially when they do reference the parts and numbers. We do have those little spare parts in there. One is actually marked as a spare, but we're not using them this time. So instead of taking it out and leaving it, I am going to leave it on the fret like that and keep it safe in the bag. Just makes it easier to find next time when we actually do need it. But these parts we've got, cleaned them all up, and the first bits we're going to be needing are these parts here. Now we've got this little dog leg part, and we have this other part, and this has a groove on it, and you've seen these before where we've had this groove on one side, and that's just a shape around this part here. Now it's going to go on the inside of this part, and I'm just going to shape it with a pair of pliers, and then just bend it a little bit with my hands. So hopefully you can see just about what I'm doing here. With the score line on this part facing down, or facing up, sorry, I've just bent it so that it fits the contour of the inner part of that piece. Now, very tiny pieces and difficult to show you on camera, but hopefully just about managed to see what I'm doing here. And it's just fitting it and fettling it to fit on that inner part that you can see there just about. Now all I'm doing is just tweaking it ever so slightly with my hand and a pair of pliers, just to try and get that contour just to fit very nicely to that inner part of that piece. And then once I'm happy with the shape, I'm just going to run a little bit of glue along the edge of that. So we now have two of these looking just like that. And we're now going to use these two plates. Now they fit just in the gap you can see here and here. Now they are shaped with this chamfer on the edge of the chassis. So it's important to make sure you get them the right way around. And they look just like that. Now they do obviously have a slot in them. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the plate and I'm going to take the little bracket and I'm going to put them together. And then what I'm going to use is a bit of super glue on the back of them. And then I'll place them into the groove or the slot that's on the edge of the chassis. That way you know that the slots are just going to line up really nicely with both parts and you won't have any issues. Now, just a caveat to this one, I tried linking this to the main body and it basically doesn't fit. So I'm having the same issue I did with the front part of the chassis where this is too wide. So I don't think when these parts were made, they haven't taken into account the width of that plate. So I'm probably going to have to take this apart again at some point in the future, just so that I can get that width narrowed down enough that it fits up inside the body. But we've got to do this on this side and the other side. Now we just got the second one. Again, doing the same thing, just gluing the piece on there and then just putting it into the slot on the side of the chassis. Just holding it for a second while that glue sets. And then we have both of them in place. Now I'm just using a little bit of glue just to reinforce those joints from the inside, just where they come through the slots. And so we have those in there looking just like that. Right, we're now going to turn our attention to these parts. And what we need to do, we just need to glue this plate to the back of this piece. Now it does have a dot pattern or a rivet pattern, and it's worth noting that because they are asymmetrical, so you do want to make sure that they match up on both sides. So we've got a single dot on one end and a double dot on the other end, so it's worth just making sure that single dot does match up together. And all I'm doing is just holding them together and just running a little bit of glue around the edge that you can see like that. That's enough to hold it in place. And the exact same thing for the other one. And where these are going to go is just here on the side of the chassis. Again, just going to go into a couple of slots and then I'll just dip these into a bit of glue and then just push them into the chassis. And that's the second one just gone in. And all I'm going to do now is, like I did with the first bits, just reinforce those with a little bit of additional glue, just to make sure that they are nice and solid in there and hopefully not going to fall out. Now these ones do actually fit nicely under the body. Obviously these ones don't have that additional plate. So as I said, those other ones I don't think have been taken into account, that additional plate that makes them a little bit thicker and wider than they need to be. So I will need to sort that. Hopefully I'll have that sorted by next week, but we'll see. So the last part of this magazine we have these two little brackets. Now, what we need to do with those is we need to take them and we need to fold them up to 90 degrees. Now, personally, I'm not going to do this. They also have got a couple of little dimples that right at the beginning we should have made a couple of like rivet details when we punched them with just a normal punch. I decided not to do that before I even decided not to use these parts, mainly because the brass is so soft that when you punch it, no matter how small a punch you use, you don't really get the rivet detail. You more or less just get a bent piece of metal. So it never really works, so I decided not to do it on this one. But as I said, I'm not actually going to be using these, but I will show you where they go and what the purpose of them is. So what we need to do, we just need to bend them, as I said, like this. We're just bending these to 90 degrees. So they look like that. And then what we need to do is place them on the chassis. Now, I was going to use my pliers here to show you, but realised that that was too small to show you. So just grab a pair of tweezers, and you can probably see that we're meant to be placing this in here. However, it's going to cover the plate that we put in, the detail plate, as well as a couple of little points on the chassis itself where it does also look like they've already got rivet detail there. So that's one of the reasons why I decided not to do it. And the second reason is I don't think it's going to add anything to this engine at all, apart from just covering up the details that are already there. So that's what we should be doing next. We should be putting one of those on each of those sides, but I'm not doing it. And that is all there is to do for that stage. So we will now move on to stage 47. So again, with this, I've pulled all the bits out of the fret, I've cleaned them all up, and again, I've left them in the same order as the fret was, mainly on this one, because there are several pieces that look very similar. So it's definitely worth noting that and keeping them in the order, that way you know exactly what part is which, and therefore hopefully not going to get them muddled up. Right, so we're going to start off with this piece. Now, all we need to do is bend the sides up to about a 45-degree angle, like that. And then same with this very tiny side. Get that one up at 45 degrees as well. And then we just need to do the same for the other one as well. So we now just got that one bent up as well. So next we're going to be actually fitting these to the chassis themselves. Now we have a couple of slots on the side, just above the current step. And we just need to put that in there. And the instructions actually tell us to then fold it downwards when it's in there. However, what I ended up doing, because I found it much easier, is I actually folded the tab upwards. And I did that before placing this in, so that when you actually place it in, it almost holds itself in the right location. And you can see me here just struggling to try and get that tab folded down, and you can see the step just falls back down. So here I am just bending it, and then this is where I decided I was going to bend it upwards. Now you can see that I'm not quite bending it to 90 degrees, just so that I can get it slotted back in to that point, and then you'll see that it pretty much just now sits exactly where we want it to. And I did the exact same thing for the other one, and then I've glued them in place. So now we've got the engine on its side. We're going to take these rivet details that we have, and we're going to be placing them on the chassis plate. Now we've got the first one here, and that's just going to sit underneath that step. Now the easy way of doing this is, as you can see, just place it in with a pair of tweezers, and then once you've got it in position, just get a small amount of glue and just run it along the bottom edge. Now when you do that, capillary action will just suck that glue right underneath the plate, and it will just stay in place. I need to do the exact same thing for the other side. Now there is quite a lot of mirroring in this one, and again, just to make sure that you've got the correct part, because there are 6 parts here that do look very similar. So you just need to make sure that you have the right one in the right location. Next up, we have these other straight pieces, and they are just going to go towards the back of the chassis, just there. And exactly the same process, just going to pop it in place with a pair of tweezers, and then just run a bead of glue down the edge, and that'll be enough to secure it in place. And again, we need to do that for the other side as well. Then finally, for this rivet detail, we have this last piece, well, pieces, because there's one at each side. One of them has a bit of a chamfer on one edge, and that's to match the 45-degree angle that we put in that original step. And it just sits on the front of that step, or on the top of that step. And again, just using a bit of glue just to secure that in place, just like I have done for all the others. And again, I'm going to be doing the exact same thing for the other side. Right, so now we just have a couple more pieces left. We're starting off with this piece, and we just need to bend this one. And we're just going to bend it to 90 degrees, like so. And then that's going to attach just on the edge of this piece here. Now we do have a tab on it, and that is just going to sit just in there, like so. Now just checking for fit. All I'm going to do is dip it in some glue, and then just place it and hold it in place, and just wait for that glue to quickly set. Trying not to glue my finger to it. And then we have that in place like so. And then we're going to finish off these issues with this very last piece, and I believe this is a holding bracket for the speedo, and it just needs to go into the very front hole you can see just here. Now I'm just testing fit in it, make sure it's right, and then just dipped it in some glue, and then we'll place it back in like so. Again, just going to hold it in place while that glue sets for a second, and then we will have that in place, just ensuring that it is straight, like so. And that is all there is to do in that stage, and all there is to do in those 2 issues. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please remember to give it a big thumbs up. So a little bit more detail added to the chassis today. Not a great deal, but managed to get through 2 issues, which was great. And I've actually come to the end of one of our folders. So I'd only put, obviously, 48 issues in there. And the next folder we have, I've only got a dozen issues in there. And then we're on to the box with all the other parts and unopened magazines. So that's more of the unknown, because I've not checked any of those parts. So we will see how that progresses. If you do want to see how that progresses and anything else that goes in the workshop, please do remember to hit the subscribe button and ding that bell, and then you'll be notified when I release new videos. Until the next time, I'll see you around. Cheers!